Welcome back to the Laboratory Podcast, where we talk everything coffee, technology, development, marketing, branding, etc., and all the other things that we find interesting. Today, what we find interesting is coffee and is being there specifically. So I'm joined by Jonathan Robinson. That's pronounced
Correct.
and you are the founder of Bean There, which is a coffee we love and respect. So thanks for having us in your roastery here. It's really
Yeah,
cool
thanks
to
for being here. I think it's the first podcast we've had
yeah, it's not
in
the
this environment.
usual kind
Surrounded
of.
by boxes and coffee sacks.
It's
Very
amazing.
industrial.
And
Love
for
it.
anyone who's listening to this somewhere, it smells really nice. But yeah, we wanted to speak to you a little bit about your journey. We find interesting businesses that have stories to tell that other people can learn something from, whether it's about technology, an entrepreneurial spirit, or a way of doing business. So we're obviously fans of your coffee. That's why we had approached you to do this.
Thank you.
Could you elaborate a little bit about your? I mean, we spoke a little bit about it now. A little bit about your story as to how you got to coffee. Were you always in coffee beforehand? What made you take this change in your career to getting into coffee and building a really well-established brand in South Africa?
I guess my journey into coffee started when I was 13 years old. My grandmother, who's is now bears the one of our coffees, Olga's Reserve, is after her. So she got me into coffee when I was 13. At one point, I remember saying, Jonathan, if you can have coffee without sugar, your life will be transformed.
I agree.
If you can taste it, you'll notice all the unique aspects of it. And she was right. There was no turning back. And so I'd always been mad about coffee. I don't think I ever thought about having a business in coffee. I landed up in the sort of IT space, working for IBM and then Dimension Data. And then when the share market crashed, I went. Well, maybe I should tell you. It was 2001. So it shows you how old I am. 2001 share market crashed, and I took my data share options were worth nothing, and decided to take a year off and travel. And so my wife and I did a 27,000 kilometer road trip through the US and Canada, back through Europe for about 3 months, and then I spent the beginning and end part of the year in Canada. And during that time, I met a guy called Ugo who had a fair trade coffee roasting business, and I just loved the model of fair trade. I loved what he was doing, which was direct fair trade, involved in the communities in Colombia and Bolivia. And I thought, jeepers, this is what I want to do in Africa. Here you could have a business in something you loved, like coffee, and you could impact the lives of small-scale farmers. And so, I came back to South Africa. I had a small sort of stint working, so 2 years raising funds for children orphaned or affected by AIDS in an organization called Starfish.
Okay.
And then decided to take the plunge and started in my garage. And that was 2005.
Can you run us through some of the practical steps of what you did when starting up? What did you do first? What were your practical steps along the way right at the beginning? You mentioned garage. How did you exactly get started?
When I decided, you start looking for supply, and I managed to connect with an amazing guy, Phil Schluter, whose family business has been in coffee for over 150 years. And so got connected with him, and it's, I suppose, a little bit crazy. I landed up. I didn't know a hell of a lot about coffee, and knew that I wanted to be involved with coffee farmers. Knew I wanted to make an impact on this continent, which I love. Knew coffee could be a great vehicle. Didn't quite know where to start, and I had a free flight, which was due to an SAA issue, anywhere on the continent. And so randomly, I just looked at the continent, and free flight, you're going to try and get the best value. So I looked at the country that was furthest away from South Africa, which was Ethiopia.
Okay.
And so I said, free flight, I'm going to Ethiopia. And so that was my decision to go to the birthplace of coffee. It's a bit embarrassing because I probably should have chosen to go to the birthplace of coffee, knowing that it was probably the birthplace of coffee.
That's how life happens,
But
right?
I landed up in Ethiopia, and that's how we landed up with our first origin. I sort of backpacked through Ethiopia, was connected to a few people, and then stumbled across this. Stumbled is hard. Was sent to this amazing community with Pharaoh Co-op, which is where we get our Ethiopian coffee. And I came back and started with one single coffee to sell, which turned out to be. I thought it was going to be, a lot easier, but I turned out to have chosen the absolutely perfect coffee. If I could go back now and choose one coffee to start with, it would be an Ethiopian Sidamo, because it works well in every form, whether it's filter, plunger, espresso. I was beating Illy on espresso tasting and, House of Coffees on filter tasting, all with the same bean. So incredible that we started in that space. And then started in the garage. I had someone initially roast for me. So I brought in the coffee myself, but I had someone doing the roasting for me. And I think, one of the things in the entrepreneurial space I think is important is just to build, anyone can roast coffee. That's probably the easier part. The harder part is building the brand. And so I focus a lot on, telling the story of our coffee, telling the fair trade story, and really building the brand, and obviously it's someone doing the roasting for us, and then I think probably another really great aspect of an entrepreneur's journey is actually not taking on more expenses than you need to. So you often hear of people starting in their garage. I think it's because it's a good place to start, because you minimize your expenses. So so I suppose that's the space I started in. And then I don't know. Should I elaborate a little bit on the different aspects of the?
So I have a couple of questions that open up there already. One is you mentioned the branding.
Yeah.
I think there's a couple of things we can go into as an entrepreneur. Maybe some better advice we can segue there. But when did you get into roasting your own coffee? Because as far as I can see, roasting is big, if not the main part of the being their business.
Yeah.
When did you get your first roaster? You had someone else roasting for you. When did the business start to grow? Was it already making sense when someone else was roasting for you?
Yeah, so it was, and I think when you're one or two people, which was at that stage was my sister, myself, and then we employed our first employee really, which was Seppo. He's still with me today, when in the beginning, we were because there was only three of us. I didn't want to get sidetracked into too many different things. So we did that for the first 3 years. And then
Had someone else roast for you?
Someone else roasting. We did the packaging. So we'd collect all the roasted beans and package it and ship it and invoice it, etc. So did that part, and then realized we got to just short of a ton of coffee a month, and I realized that it's the right thing. We always wanted to roast. It was just about getting the timing right. So it was at that point that we moved into 44 Stanley, found that space, opened a cafe, put in the roaster, and took on really the whole sort of process.
Okay.
Interestingly, in that year that we opened there, our volumes actually probably had stagnated or maybe even dipped a bit.
Okay.
Because suddenly your focus shifts. So suddenly I was now managing, we were now running a cafe. And so the whole sort of energy out there, getting in, looking for new customers and trying to build a wholesale business took a little bit of a dive.
Okay.
And so, I suppose for, anyone starting is, make sure you are well focused on what your business is about. And our business is, 80% the sale of roasted coffee.
Okay.
It's very easy to get distracted into running a coffee shop and worrying about
the
fresh
sexier stuff, basically
cheesecakes or
yes. What you guys do make a mean cheesecake.
It is great, eh?
Yeah. So that's actually a good segue to the thing you had alluded to previously is brand building.
Yeah.
Because the way I see it, correct me if I'm wrong, the 44 Stanley and maybe some of the other the cafes you guys had previously, kind of brand building exercise to expose people to the brand.
Yeah.
Can you touch on your experience or your advice to other people, whether starting out a business or growing a business, the importance of building a brand, and what touch points for you were the most powerful brand builders, whether it's packaging or a cafe? What's your advice to those people, and what are your most powerful touch points?
Yeah. I think one of the things that I've been really fortunate with in being there is that I'm sure you're very well familiar, and probably people listening are as well, with Simon Sinek's Start With Why.
Yes.
And it's it's been watched millions of times, but we started a business that is built on why. So
Purpose.
So our whole, being there exists to make a difference in the lives of small scale coffee farmers through direct fair trade, and then while providing meaningful employment in South Africa. So that is our vision. If you ask anyone who works at Being There, they will tell you exactly why we exist. And I think that for me, that knowing why you're doing what you're doing is so important. I mean, it drives everything. It drives the decisions that you make, because you know what success looks like. So we constantly, when you're looking at different opportunities and options, you're constantly evaluating it through the lens of why are we in business. That's why people, why we have very little staff turnover, why people work here for years, why
It's
we
a
have
deep motivator,
yeah,
that reasoning behind what you're doing.
exactly. And you wake up in the morning saying, I know why I go to work today. We are impacting the lives of farmers by paying them fairly, and our payments to farmers means that their lives are transformed, and I want to be involved in something like that. And that's the driving force for for a lot of people that work at being there. So for me, having a strong why is a key to starting, to being involved in any business. I guess maybe on the branding components, developing. I suppose there's many aspects, but I mean I'm pretty OCD on the brand side. I mean, you've been into the store. I mean, everything needs to be
It's very pretty.
pretty. It needs to you need to walk and say, I really want to use this coffee. This is beautiful. The space is beautiful. The feel is good. The coffee is great. And then, I mean, every aspect. I mean, I think it's really important to know what you are good at and what you're not good at. I mean, to tell you that we designed the decor at our 44 Stanley shop would be incorrect. I mean, you find a good designer and let them do what they're good at. The same with the branding, our logos and packaging. And I do think that it's so important to have this holistic experience from every piece that you pick up, from your bags to your cards.
Yeah, I mean,
to your,
if you look at some of the packaging here on you guys' coffee, it's amazing, and it's very synonymous with what you would see in your guys' shop as well. So there's that like consistency of the brand that lives throughout.
Yeah,
I'm glad that you're an advocate of external suppliers hiring. Can you tell us about that? Would you go about finding really good graphic designers to do your packaging, getting interior designers to come and do your shop? Did you have a lot of influence in that?
Yeah, I mean, I think I definitely believe in working with great people. I mean, we had an agency called Van Dam do our branding, and I mean, you if you work with good people, you can really explain your story and why you're in business, and then they turn that into that whole sort of incredible sort of look and feel that drives that feeling. I mean, it touches in every on every aspect, from the packaging to the vehicles to the website to the to the social media. I think in every space. I mean, although for example, I love taking photographs. I realize that I'm not as great as Dan Carter, who does who's an incredible photographer and does most of ours, because that is so key to driving this feeling of the brand.
Yes.
And then we've very early on, I sort of settled on 5 key aspects of our brand, which are important. So, a single origin coffee. So when I started, there was not single origin coffee on the shelves. It was mainly blended coffee. So really pushed hard to get people to get to know a country through their coffee. So to fall in love with the florals in an Ethiopian, for example. It hadn't really happened before. People just say this is a European blend or a VIP or Mocha Java. What is that? So really wanted people to get to know a country and to feel that country through its coffee. So single origin's always been key. That was a key differentiator for us. The second was that because we don't blend our coffee, we had to buy really exceptional quality coffee because it had to stand alone.
So you don't
have blended.
You don't have a single blend.
We do have blends.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're blending. So I should say that we don't sell blends to consumers. So you won't, if you walk into the shop, you won't see any blends from being there.
So every package that I pick up and say Pick and Pay is always a single origin. Okay.
Yeah. So we have done for some of our wholesale customers, people who want to blend, we would do that, but we're blending our single origins into those blends.
Okay.
But all our coffees can stand alone on their own, and they need to in order to be able to be sold as single origins. The reason that most roasters in the world blend is so that you can buy cheap coffee. You can buy a coffee that has acidity, one that has body, one that has aroma. You can blend those together and you get, oh, this is all right.
Yeah.
This will work.
Yeah.
But take those coffees and put them in isolation and, not
so
drinkable.
great. Yeah.
So it costs a lot more when you buy really great coffee. So they have to be high scoring on their own. And then you obviously can, blend those together. So I suppose, the second piece that we pushed hard is the exclusive coffee, like really high quality, high scoring coffees.
Okay.
The third is, which we've, alluded to here already, but the fair trade aspect. For us, that's the reason we're in business.
Yeah.
But for consumers and for our wholesale customers, it's not how we sell. We sell on quality. That must be the reason that you come to us. You come back because of the quality.
Okay.
But hopefully along the way you realize,
it's a good add-on to know that you're doing good for the farmers,
yeah,
etc.
Yeah.
Okay.
But anytime you drive a business on fair trade or on what could be considered a charity component, you stand the risk of people buying it once and then not coming back. So if our coffee wasn't great, we would have people who maybe said, "Oh, well, just let me support some."
How would you translate that point into a business man or woman at home that started their business that focusing on the component of quality instead of on that story or the charitable story in growing repeat customers? How would you turn that into something that someone else can replicate?
Yeah.
If you were to give someone advice based on those 2 points you mentioned there, what would that be?
I mean, I think you've got to, so no matter, if you've got a product that has a great story, it needs to be in my opinion, needs to be a great product first. First. Yeah. So, and no matter what it is, if you're making wonderful, handbags or something, and it's using, sustainably, sourced products and then, empowering, women who are maybe sewing these together. I mean, those are all great aspects of the story, and they form part of of a marketing story. But if the bags aren't great, and the quality is not great, I think your business is doomed to failure. You'll have a great story, but not a great product.
So we find that a lot of the time as service providers or people who create brand and marketing strategies around a product, that what we do quite well is taking something, whatever it is, and we try very, very hard not to work on anything that we don't believe in or that we think is just point blank wrong, or that a consumer or person shouldn't buy, whether it's a service or a product. We often find that even when a product or service is all right, I mean, we don't know how good it is necessarily because we're not the people that buy it. We're being paid to market that product or service.
Yeah.
And then we create amazing stories around it, like you've done, and your story has value in any case, but we're just speaking about the consumer's value that they're getting out of that story, which is just feeling good. But that feel good has a curve that kind of grows and stagnates and drops very quickly because it's just based on that emotion. What you're highlighting there, I completely agree with. I've just never heard it in such practical terms, is that your product has to be good first and foremost, and the story has to be great as well, but has to come second. Because you're not going to find repeat customers on that same emotional story every single time. Once they've heard it once or twice, they're over it.
Okay. I mean, one of my heroes in I don't know in fair trade, I suppose, is Patagonia.
Yes.
I mean, and they're a perfect example of that. I mean, I have lots of Patagonia product.
That's bad because they only want you to buy
one
of each.
Only one of each type of thing.
Okay.
Yeah, no duplicates. But I love their product, and they do that well. They first and foremost, they are a quality product, and like in our business, 90% of Patagonia's customers will be buying it because it's a great product.
Yeah,
they sort of like the story,
later.
It's fair trade, and they're good for the planet and whatever, but that's not really why it is. It looks good. It works well.
Yeah.
It's the best when it's reviewed online. It's the best available. You look down. What is the best rain jacket? Oh, it's a Patagonia one. The fact that is 70% recycled content sewed by workers that are paid fairly.
That's just an add-on.
Is an add-on. But consumers will only buy that product if they think it's the best. The other things are secondary.
Okay. No, I think that's a good point to mention. I buy into that philosophy too. So the last question I wanted to ask, seeing that we're a company that focuses very much on tech development, digital marketing, all things digital, branding, design, etc. How has marketing and actually how has technology played a role in the success of being there over the past years?
Yeah, I mean, I think from a website point of view, I mean that's been we've put I suppose we put a lot of focus into the website side, into our sort of Google Analytics, Google AdWords,
Yeah.
trying to understand that very,
SEO.
very flippin' complicated. Well, I don't know if I really understand it at all, actually. But we've put we've put a lot of work into at least attempting to understand how these things work.
Okay.
And then obviously, a huge amount of social media.
How has that positively influenced?
Yeah, so I think that I mean, I recall even at the beginning when I was still sitting in my
Garage.
in my garage, having a phone call from someone who asked to be put through to the stationery department, and so I duly sort of put on a different accent and transferred this person to myself. And at that point, I realized that having a web presence, having and looking like I was a lot bigger than I was,
Yeah.
was actually really useful.
Okay.
So I think one of the things that you really get out of investing heavily in that digital space, a good website, great content, spending money on on good video, on good photography, on really trying to understand that world well, is that you do get sometimes boxed well above your weight class, and it was pretty evident even just in that call, is that they obviously thought I was a much bigger company than I was. And so I think as an entrepreneur starting in that space, it's really you have to invest in heavily in that world. And I mean, for us during COVID, I mean, if we hadn't had a really strong website and strong e-commerce store, we would have been in trouble. I mean, we shut the lights out from a home consumer point of view, selling equipment, etc., because we had an easy to use, maybe not as easy as it could be. Could always be better, but navigable website that allowed us to access people who would not walk into 44 standing. So critical, I think.
I like that point in being able to make yourself look. And I think this comes definitely from a place of not lying about your size, but more to, I always say a brand is your personality. It's the way that you reflect yourself outward into the world. And if you don't dress up well every day, not making yourself look very presentable, no one's going to approach you. And having a great e-com store, having a great presence on the platforms that are most valuable to you, be it, say, it's Instagram and LinkedIn and Facebook, that allows people to look at you and go, okay, no, these guys take care of themselves. You're not going to look at someone where there's one post, it was in July 2017, and then they actually have a tangible business, a brick and mortar business or something like that, but they're not presenting themselves into the world properly. We're big advocates of that as well. I mean, that's what we try to assist people to do, is make yourself look good. We always call ourselves, I reference that movie, it's called The Hitch or Hitched with Will Smith, where he's the kind of like the dating counselor for this guy. And we try to help companies develop brands that are person-like and personified, so that they can better date with their potential customers and suppliers in the world. So, any last advice for entrepreneurs and stuff who might want to follow in your trails? Anyone who's trying to build something like you, that looks at you as an inspiration, an advice, one or two pieces of advice that you learned along your journey?
I mean, I suppose maybe three things. Two of them I've touched on already, which is probably just be really strong on your why, because that'll see you through the hard times. When you're wondering what you have done, potentially giving up a corporate job or other opportunities to pursue this entrepreneurial journey. If you have a strong why, it'll see you through. I think the second thing is really be careful on your expenses to start with. Things like, I see way too many people not starting in their garage and loading up an office park office, and it's unnecessary. And so just keep those expenses tight. Spend your money on in the marketing aspect, the digital side, all those pieces. Don't spend it on stuff that people never see. And then our third thing, which is a statement that I was given early on in my journey, which has been so helpful, is this one, which is turnover is vanity, profit is sanity, and cash flow is reality. And that is in an entrepreneurial space, cash flow is a killer. And so, really, don't get too excited about the big turnovers. Make sure you have that profit in place and flip and collect your cash, because otherwise, you can come unstuck pretty quickly.
That's fantastic. Those are some really great points. So, Jonathan Robinson from Being There, where can we find you online?
So, beanthere.co.za, and then our @beanthere coffee is our handle on all platforms: Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, etc.
Perfect. Cool. We'll make sure we link that below. And you're listening to the Laboratory Podcast. Thanks for listening, and we will see you soon.
Thank you.
Cheers.